estimates tell us that probably it will take anywhere between 3 to 6 years for corporates to deleverage from here on. Obviously, this is a median number that we're talking about, the top 500 corporates or the top 500 borrowers. And within this, there are certain corporates who will probably take lesser than 3 years, but sectors which are stressed today, for example, infrastructure, construction, metals and mining, probably will take much longer than what 6 years would be. While these assumptions were made somewhere around FY15 with the numbers used for FY14, I think what we had clearly not envisaged was that inflation would come off in such a significant way. And what we are seeing during the course of FY16 is clearly some amount of disinflationary impact that's playing out, which means the revenues are probably not going to grow as much, and which will put some further pressure on EBITDA. So some of the assumptions that we probably made in the earlier estimates probably may look like a bit more optimistic. So it's a fair reason to believe that some of these numbers may actually get pushed beyond 3 to 6 years, and so the recovery will probably take a significant amount of time from here on as we go along. Two parts to the whole story. One is in terms of what's the extent of leverage that they have. The second is the ones which don't necessarily have leverage on their balance sheets. Why are they not necessarily investing today? And for that, I think it was important to draw out what typically would be the capacity utilization of corporates today. So what we did was looked at the top 500 borrowers and tried to see how we can calculate our capacity utilization. And for that, we used the revenue numbers for the top 500 capex spenders for the last few years. We used their capital expenditure, deflated both of them by what we call as the GDP deflator, and arrived at what we thought was the deflated revenue and the deflated capex numbers. And once we divided the revenue by the capex, we got a rough sense of what the capacity utilization would be. Our calculations show that the capacity utilization roughly was about 0.74 or 74% in FY15. Which meant that we were operating at a fairly lower level of utilization compared to what you would normally expect in an economy where demand should actually be showing signs of an uptick. Our reading is that when corporates start investing, they need a capacity utilization of at least about 85 to 90%. So from a 74% capacity utilization today, if they have to go to about 85 to 90%, it will probably take, in our view, about 24 to 36 months, assuming they grow at about 8%. So our reading is that probably the capex cycle at this moment is another 24 to 36 months away. This can obviously be curtailed down if the government were to spend in a very proactive way, in a very focused way. So if the government expenditure ends up being much more significant than what is envisaged at this stage, this 24-36 months can actually be cut down, and you could probably see some kind of a revival even in the second half of FY17. But realistically, I think at this moment our base case estimate is it may be FY19 you would see some corporates starting to reinvest in as part of their capital expenditure program. The bigger capital expenditure invariably has come from sectors like oil and gas, metals and mining, and power. Our reading is that at this moment, the structural changes that are happening in the metals and mining space, it's unlikely that you will see a fair amount of capital expenditure in that space even after about 3 to 4 years. Whereas as far as the power and oil and gas are concerned, while they still have their constraints, a large part of the capital expenditure historically in these two segments has always been done by the public sector undertakings. And those, in our opinion, are probably still well positioned to kind of incur the next level of capital expenditure. So yes, we will see expenditure in these segments as well, largely driven by the PSUs and maybe by some private sector corporates. But the time frame is something which we will, as I said, will probably take about 24 to 36 months on an overall basis.